Moving on, let's talk about unity and harmony. The point of this principle is to understand that what you create is seen as a whole entity and not the individual parts, even if you see them that way. What does that mean? To see it, look at the set of circles on the left. They are circles of different sizes, formed into a random pattern. Do you see individual circles, or do you see a large grouping of circles? You probably see the grouping. The circles are all the same color, so you have no reason to separate them on your own. Now, look at the right image. What do you immediately see? I am 100% sure that you don't see one big image this time. You see a set of 3 different groupings. You didn't have to do anything to make that happen. Your brain did it, all on its own. Why did that happen? In the first image, the proximity caused you to see one image. In the second, the distance in the middle provided the separation your brain needed. Another trick came from the similarity of the objects. Your brain would have seen them differently had they been different shapes. Here's something interesting. Look at this set. Do you see 4 groupings or 3? There are 4 different sized circles here, but because of the proximity and the distance in the design, you see 3 groups. Now how many groupings are there? Your brain probably saw 4 groupings very quickly. It may have taken you a moment to count to 4, but you separated them by color. You assumed that there was meaning there. In this same design format, there is repetition and rhythm to it. It has sets and it flows as a group. Why is all this important? If you're trying to show people sets of information, you need to create the groupings for them. You can see that their brain will do the work very quickly if you set it up to be that way. The opposite of this is if you create an activity of some sort and ask the learner to create groupings and separate the items for themselves. Using this principle, you can create an effective design for that activity. Let's go back to this design. How did you know these all went together? The color is the primary key, right? It's all green. They're also on the same screen together. Therefore, you immediately assume they have something in common. The fact that process is separated by the green box leads you to assume that this is the top of the hierarchy. Therefore, it's the top grouping level. How did you know they were separate topics within the same group? There are 4 groupings, even though it's images and text. You know this because of the spacing between them. You also know how they go together because of the proximity of the component parts to each other. Each icon is different, so that was a visual cue. I also added the semi-transparent box to add the extra element that shows you that each is independent of the other as I speak about them. Here, let me show you it again. Here's the second one, the third one, and now the fourth one. What would have happened if I would have changed the header for each topic as I spoke about it? What would you assume going forward? Your brain would probably assume that this happened for a reason and it wasn't some random design goof. Most likely, you would assume that the topics were color-coded, and going forward, you would look for that clue as we talked further about the content. If that was the goal, a clue for that might have been to also adjust the icon or text to match the rhythm that we were trying to create. Now, what would have happened if it was a random design goof? You probably would have gotten lost in the content. Your brain would be trying to make sense of the design issue and wondering what was up. While you were doing that, you wouldn't be following the content or the narrator. In the end, you would have missed potentially important content because of the cognitive dissonance in the design. You really have to be intentional with what you do when it comes to things like this because the distraction is real.